Welcome back to another episode of DIY Golf Car Garage. Today we're continuing working on our 2010 Club Car Precedent, and we're going to be installing a RHOX spindle lift kit. First thing you want to do is go ahead and open up the package, make sure you have all your parts there so you'll know whether to give us a call if you're missing anything. Next, before we get started, if you look on the back of your spindles, you'll notice that it has 3 letters. The very last letter will be either a P or a D, showing you the driver or passenger side. So, let's get my front spindles, my gloves, and let's go get started. The first thing we will need to do is get these tires and wheels off so we can get to the spindles. So I'm going to put the jack underneath the very front. We'll jack this front end up and put some jack stands under it for safety. Now that we've got our tires and wheels off, I'm going to take my 13/16 socket, remove this nut off the spindle so we can get this hub off. Now, as you can see, this one is absolutely filthy because we've lost our dust cover. This will get a new one by the time we're done. Okay, we've got our hub off. Now let's take our ball joint or tie rod assembly loose from the spindle. Now let's take our top kingpin nut off. Now let's take the bolt out here which holds the front spring to your kingpin. And don't worry about putting a wrench on the back. It has a weld nut on there. It's not going nowhere. Now we've got that bolt out. All we have to do is slide it out and up and slide it down. Then we've got that out of the way. We've got everything cleaned up. It's time to start putting things back together. Make sure you've got just regular automotive or industrial grease. What you want to do is go ahead and coat the bolts and nuts as you're putting it back together, especially the inside of the bushings here. Go ahead and coat that real good and coat your spindle rod here as you put it up. Also remember, once you get done, there is a Zerk fitting on the outside. Go ahead and put a couple of squeezes of grease in there. Now that I got this hub assembly all nice and cleaned up, I want to put it back on the spindle here, but I want to go ahead and grease the spindle shaft so it'll slide on much better. But while I've got this hub off, it's a good time to check my bearings. What you want to do is get your finger, put it inside, and rotate your bearings around. Make sure that there's no movement side to side, and that as you turn it, you have a smooth turn. If you feel any gritting or where it will not turn smoothly, you're fixing to have a problem with your bearings, and while you have it off, you either want to go ahead and replace them or at least get them ordered. Now here you just want to make sure you snug the bolt down, the nut, real good, but just don't worry about over tightening. And let's go get a split pin and put on it. Then we can get our dust cap put on and then get our wheels. Then once we do that, we can go to the other side and do the exact same thing. Now that we've got the front end done, let's go ahead and get the back. First thing I want to do is get this back end jacked way up in the air so I can put my jack stands under it for safety. Okay, now then, what I've got is my 5/8 socket. I'm going to take the U-bolts loose on both sides. Then I'm going to take my jack, put it underneath the axle housing, right underneath the motor. That way I can add support for the axle for when we start getting the springs out. So let's go ahead and take the U-bolts out. Okay, before we take this spring out, I did take the U-bolt off on this side. I loosened it on the other, and I've got the axle supported with the jack. So let's go ahead and take this spring out. Now for the spring bracket, which will sit right on top of this flat area. Next bracket here, which is actually the shock extension, which we don't use on this particular car, will go right on top so we can put our bolts down through. Because our spring will go right across the top. What we'll do now is go ahead and lower the axle so that we can get our spring back on. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and use the jack and lift the axle back up so that we can center it. Shock plate extension, and now our bolts. Okay, now that I've got the nuts on these hand tight, what I'll do now is we'll go to the other side and get started doing it. You do not want to tighten this up just yet. We want to make sure we have the movement, make the other side a lot easier. Well, I hope today's episode showing you how to install a RHOX spindle lift on a Club Car Precedent was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Don't forget to subscribe. And once again, thank you for visiting us here at DIY Golf Car Garage.